Good evening. We are at the Mint Internet of Things conference, and I'm here chatting with Gordon Orr, who's the McKinsey Asia chairman. Thanks, Gordon, for joining us today.
Delighted to be here.
So, my first question to you is, what is the Internet of Things? It's different things for different people, so could you elaborate on that?
It's always going to be different things for different people because it is such a broad potential way of looking at it, from consumer to business. But really, it's going to be starting with sensors, physical sensors that pick up some kind of activity, and actuators, which is the opposite of sensors, that actually make something happen. Pulling information from both of those that then gets aggregated and analyzed through the internet, and then ultimately gets visualized by a company, usually, that then can take decisions on the basis of that and feedback actions to the actuators and sensors. In many ways, that's what's existed in factories for a long time, but we didn't call it the Internet of Things, we called it running an efficient factory. Now with the internet, we can scale it up in many ways beyond the factory to understand equipment, how it works in the field, consumers, how they're feeling and behaving.
Now, when you talk about scale, there's a tremendous amount of capital, human as well as financial, that is required. Do you think India is ready and has that amount of capital to invest in Internet of Things?
Well, the interesting, there's many parts of the Internet of Things that don't actually require that much capital. Much of it's about taking the micro electromechanical sensors, the gyroscopes, the speed sensors, the temperature sensors and the like, combining that with the semiconductors, creating a platform and using it to solve a business problem. And that takes brain power as much as it does financial capital. Many Indian companies are best positioned to understand business process compared to anyone else in the world, given that they're running these processes for so many companies.
Now, does India have the right legal framework? You mentioned a few about legal issues. Does it have a right legal framework? If not, what are the aspects that actually it should implement in this framework?
Many laws have been put in place to ensure that businesses did provide the right quality, the right frequency of service and monitoring of the equipment that they'd install to ensure that it's safe for use by their customers, and didn't take any shortcuts and the like. We're moving to a world where correctly operated, the sensors, actuators, Internet of Things will give you a better answer than having the human go. And so it will be the machine learning you get will be superior to human judgment. But at what point does that happen? And if you're the government, you're going to want to be conservative on this. If you're the business, you're going to want to be aggressive on this. Now, this actually comes back to a couple of things where China might be able to take a lead. Because one of the things that China's very, very focused on is creating domestic demand. And when we talk about India, what does it need to be successful? Domestic demand is a pretty important part of this. We know the US has massive domestic demand. We know China will have massive domestic demand. If India wants a really strong industry in IoT that will export to the rest of the world, it has to have strength in supplying to a rapidly growing domestic market.
So taking it ahead from there, what are the trends that you see in both India and China? Are these divergent trends, or do you see these coming together at some point?
Well, in both you've clearly got the government's attention, which is good. So, and in China you've got the usual government approach of here's an opportunity to throw money at the situation. So we have special economic zones, we have incentives to component and sensor manufacturers that are setting up there. In both India and China, we have the semiconductor initiatives, which, as in fact, it's incredibly hard to catch up in the semiconductor industry. So I think we have to be clear what parts of the semiconductor industry will it be possible to play in with an indigenous strategy, and that'll only be a subset. So let's have realistic goals there. I think China is encouraging a lot of businesses to think about how they apply. China's taking still, I think, quite a hardware-driven approach. I mean, but learnings that you get in China from the big multinationals who are bringing that kind of, change my fundamental business model. If I'm in aero engines, if I'm in elevators, if I'm in automotive, these are industries with very, very strong multinational presence in China, and the Chinese companies will, as always, look at those companies and say, what are they doing well that's allowing them to make money? And if they're making 60-70% of their money out of service, the Chinese companies will work it out. It may take some trial and error, but it'll get there. I think the Indian companies naturally have a business process mindset to things. But what I'm looking to hear more about in India is an integrated point of view that cuts across the platforms, the software, the hardware, and pulls it all together, because I think the integration capability is really where a lot of the value capture is going to come. And provided there's domestic demand in India, then I think we're going to be in good shape.
Okay, now speaking of this, what would be the 3 most important things that you would advise CEOs to take into consideration if they're really serious about implementing Internet of Things?
First of all, you have to have the understanding. Second of all, make sure you have the right CIO and technology capabilities in your organization. And 3, find 2 or 3 lead customers, probably your most important customers, that you're going to work through this and make it happen and make it successful.